One moment, we were playing cards. The next, my wife was breaking our vows right in front of me. How did one poker game destroy everything? You won't believe what she chose. I was never much of a card player. My dad and uncle tried to teach me some games when I was younger, but I couldn't seem to grasp the finer points. Eventually, I gave up on all of it, except solitaire. My wife, Sarah, on the other hand, loved card games and was pretty good at them. She wasn't World Series of Poker good or even Smoky Backroom in Atlantic City good, but she had a close-knit group of friends she played with regularly, and she often won. She had even entered a few local tournaments and did quite well. On this particular evening, we were at the home of our friends Ben and Linda. They had a cozy house on the outskirts of Austin, Texas, and a bunch of us had gathered for a poker night and to catch up. Ben and Linda were playing along with our friends Mike, Tom, Chris, and Ryan. Tom and Chris were both single, and I hung out with Mike's wife, Jessica, and Ryan's wife, Erica. And no, I didn't feel awkward hanging out with the wives. Sarah had known Ben and Linda since college and met Tom not long after. The rest of the group were friends we had picked up along the way. I was in the living room with Jessica and Erica, chatting about work, family, and general life stuff. It was getting late, and I figured the poker game would be wrapping up soon. I was expecting Sarah to walk in any moment and say it was time to head home. But instead of her usual cheerful voice, I heard something strange, almost like chanting, coming from the kitchen where the poker table was set up. What the hell is that? I thought, standing up to see what was going on. When I walked into the kitchen, the sight before me stopped me cold. Sarah was kneeling in front of Tom, who had his pants down, and she had her hand wrapped around him. She was just inches away from putting it in her mouth. I reacted without thinking. I rushed forward, pulling Sarah away and shoving Tom in the chest at the same time. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I yelled, my voice shaking with a mix of shock and anger. Mike, who was sitting at the table, stood up and tried to explain. "It's part of the game, Nick. They made a bet, and Sarah wanted to raise, but she didn't have enough money, so she offered to cover the bet." "I don't care what the bet was, she's not doing it," I shouted, my heart racing. "Honey, wait." Sarah jumped in, trying to calm me down. "I had an incredible hand. I would have won 9 times out of 10 with that hand. It was a gamble, and I lost." "Fine, you lost," I snapped, my voice growing louder. "We'll settle up next time with actual cash. We're leaving." "No, Nick, I can't," she started, but I was already done. "I have to do this. It was a fair bet." "You don't have to do anything," I shouted. "Let's go." Tired of arguing, I grabbed Sarah's arm, intending to pull her out of the room and get her home. But to my shock, she yanked her arm away from me. "No, Nick," she insisted. "If I back out on a bet, I won't be allowed to play with them anymore. I have to honor it." "I don't care, Sarah. You're not doing it." My voice was raw with frustration and disbelief. I reached for her again, but she stepped back, evading my grasp. At that moment, my anger flared even hotter. Why in the world was this so important to her? Why was she so determined to humiliate me like this in front of everyone? Then something unexpected happened. "Guys, help me out here," Sarah called to the others. And before I knew it, Mike, Chris, and Ryan grabbed hold of me. They held me back while Sarah knelt in front of Tom once again, as if nothing had happened. I struggled against them, desperate to stop her. "Sarah, please don't do this," I begged. "You don't have to. You can just walk away." "I'm sorry, Nick," she said calmly, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. "I made the bet, and now I have to honor it." I caught a glimpse of a smirk on Tom's face as Sarah lowered herself back onto her knees, her hand wrapping around him once more. I looked over at Jessica and Erica, hoping for some kind of intervention from them, but they both just sat there, not saying a word. It was as if they were in a daze, waiting to see how far this would go. I fought harder, managing to get one arm free, but I was outnumbered. The guys quickly restrained me again. I kept struggling, but then the moment that broke me came. Sarah placed her lips around Tom, taking him into her mouth. And just like that, all the fight left me. I went limp, my body no longer able to muster the strength to resist. The adrenaline that had been fueling me was completely drained. As I slumped, The guys holding me relaxed their grip. They must have sensed that I wasn't going to put up any more of a fight. "Just let me go," I muttered weakly. "I don't want to see this. Just let me leave." The guys looked at Sarah, who briefly glanced at me before nodding. They released me, and I stood there for a moment, my eyes locked with hers. I could see the faintest glimmer of regret in her expression, but it wasn't enough to make her stop. I silently turned and walked out the front door, my legs shaky beneath me. I had hoped, prayed that she would come after me, that she would realize what she was doing and stop. But she didn't. I stumbled to the car, still in shock. My hands were trembling as I fumbled with the keys, trying to unlock the door. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what had just happened. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? I don't even remember the drive home. The next thing I knew, I was pulling into the driveway of our house in Austin. We had driven Sarah's car to the game, so I tossed her keys onto the kitchen counter and I headed for the bedroom. My mind still reeling, but one thing was clear. I couldn't stay here, not after what had happened. I went into our closet and grabbed a suitcase and a duffel bag. Without a second thought, I began throwing my clothes into them. About 30 minutes later, I heard the front door open, and Sarah's voice called out, "Nick, where are you?" She walked into the bedroom, her face still flushed from the night's events. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice tinged with irritation. "What does it look like?" I shot back, barely able to contain my anger. "I'm packing." "Okay, but why?" she asked, as if she truly didn't understand the gravity of the situation. "Why?" I repeated incredulously. "Because I can't stay here anymore, Sarah. I can't stay with you after what you just did." "Nick, come on," Sarah said, her voice exasperated. "It was just a bet. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I had to honor it. It's not like I wanted to, but that's how poker works sometimes." "It wasn't just a bet, Sarah," I yelled, my voice cracking. "You don't seem to get it. What you did wasn't just about the game. You violated our marriage vows. You humiliated me in front of our friends. You put a poker game ahead of your own husband, and you expect me to be okay with that? Come on, baby. It was just a stupid BJ," she said, rolling her eyes as if the whole thing was no big deal. "Nothing else happened. Even if that was the only thing you did, it doesn't make it okay," I shouted. "You don't get it, do you? It wasn't just a physical act. It was the fact that you cared more about not losing face in some stupid game than you did about me, your husband." Sarah stood there for a moment, staring at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Then she sighed. "I had to honor the bet, Nick. If I backed out, they wouldn't let me play anymore. I couldn't just renege on my friends. If they were really your friends, they wouldn't have let you make that bet in the first place," I shot back. "Real friends don't put you in a position where you have to choose between your dignity and some stupid game." She crossed her arms, looking frustrated. "Okay, I see your point, but don't you think you're overreacting? I mean, it's not like I had sex with him." "It's not just about that, Sarah," I yelled. "It's about the fact that you chose to dishonor our marriage. You chose a game over me. I was standing there begging you not to do it, and you still went ahead. That's what hurts the most." Her eyes flickered with something. Was it regret? But before I could say anything else, she shrugged. "I can't just walk away from my friends over one bad decision. You need to calm down. It wasn't that serious." I zipped up the suitcase and slung the duffel bag over my shoulder. I had had enough of this conversation. "You don't get it, Sarah, and I don't think you ever will." Without another word, I walked out of the bedroom, leaving her standing there in stunned silence. I drove to the Blue Oak Hotel, a modest place in downtown Austin that Sarah and I had stayed at a few times in the past. I wasn't ready to go too far yet, but I couldn't bear to stay in the house with her after what had happened. I checked in and spent the night tossing and turning, unable to sleep. The weight of everything was pressing down on me, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop replaying the events of the night over and over in my mind. I still couldn't wrap my head around how quickly everything had unraveled. The next day, I buried myself in work, trying to distract myself from the gnawing pain in my chest. I didn't answer any of Sarah's calls or texts. She apologized in every message, but none of it felt real. She still didn't seem to understand the full extent of what she had done. After work, instead of heading back to the hotel, I decided to stop at a local sports bar, the Dugout, for a bite to eat. I wasn't particularly hungry, but I didn't feel like going back to the loneliness of the hotel room just yet. I was sitting in a booth, staring blankly at the TV, when I felt a presence beside me. I looked up to see Jessica and Erica standing there, concern etched across their faces. "Nick, can we sit down?" Jessica asked softly. I sighed and nodded, gesturing for them to join me. "What's there to talk about?" I muttered as they slid into the booth. "You saw what happened. Everyone saw." "We're so sorry," Erica said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We didn't know what to do. It was all so surreal." "You didn't know what to do?" I repeated bitterly. "You just sat there and watched while my wife—" I couldn't even say it out loud. "You know what she did, and your husbands held me back like it was no big deal. How would you feel if it were one of you on your knees in front of another man?" Jessica and Erica exchanged uncomfortable glances. "We didn't know how to react at first," Jessica admitted. "It was like a car accident. We were in shock, and by the time we realized what was happening, it was too late." "Too late?" I muttered, shaking my head. "It's always too late." "Nick, we feel awful about what happened," Erica said quietly. "We really do. And you're right. If it had been one of us, I don't know what we would have done. We should have stepped in, and we didn't." "Should have?" I scoffed. "You think we were in shock, Nick?" Jessica tried again. "But you have every right to be angry with us." "I'm not just angry with you," I said, my voice bitter. "I'm angry with all of them. They held me back like I was overreacting, as if I was the one being unreasonable watching my wife humiliate me." Jessica and Erica exchanged another glance, unsure of what to say. "Have you talked to Sarah since that night?" Erica asked cautiously. "I haven't said a word to her," I replied coldly. "What is there to say? She doesn't even think she did anything wrong. It's just a stupid bet to her. Meanwhile, I'm standing there begging her to stop, and she's more worried about losing her spot in a poker game than losing me." "You should talk to her," Jessica suggested gently. "Maybe she's had time to reflect on what happened." "Or maybe she hasn't," I said, shaking my head. "It doesn't matter. She already showed me what's more important to her, and it wasn't me." The silence stretched on for a moment before Erica spoke again. "Nick, I get that you're hurt, and I understand why. But do you really want to end your marriage over this? I mean, Sarah loves you. We've all seen it." "Does she?" I challenged. "Because it sure didn't seem like it that night." Erica sighed, looking down at her hands. "It's not about us, Nick. It's about you. You're the one who has to make the decision. But I don't think Sarah would have done this if she didn't feel trapped in some way. We're not defending her actions, but we've been friends with you both for years. It's hard for us to see it all fall apart over one terrible night." I leaned back in the booth, the weight of their words sinking in. "I don't know if I can forgive her for this," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't know if I want to." 2 days later, I made the hardest decision of my life. I filed for divorce. It wasn't a choice I made lightly, but I couldn't stay in a marriage where I felt so disrespected. As much as I still loved Sarah, I couldn't get past the fact that she had chosen a poker game over me, over our relationship. That was a line I couldn't ignore. To my surprise, Sarah signed the divorce papers without much of a fight. She didn't even try to convince me to stay, and that cut deeper than anything else. It was as if losing me didn't matter to her at all. In the weeks that followed, I heard from her only sporadically, mostly through short texts apologizing but never fully addressing what had happened. It felt like she didn't care, like I had been right all along. Her pride at that poker table meant more than our marriage. The divorce went through faster than I had expected. Once it was finalized, I found myself feeling strangely empty. I had thought the pain would ease after it was all over, but instead, it lingered. I still missed her, even though I knew I couldn't go back to how things were. I missed the life we had built, the love we had shared. A few days after the divorce, I went back to the Lantern, a small bar that had been a favorite of ours in Austin. We had gone there for our first date, and it was also the place where I proposed to her. Now I was back, sitting alone at the same bar, where I had once celebrated the happiest moments of my life. I was on my second drink, staring into the glass, when I felt someone take the seat next to me. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. That familiar scent of her perfume gave her away. "Is the seat taken?" Sarah asked, her voice soft. I glanced over at her, my heart conflicted. "No," I said simply. "Go ahead." She slid onto the bar stool next to me, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. We just sat there in silence, the weight of everything that had happened hanging heavy between us. Finally, she broke the silence. "Nick, I don't even know where to begin," she said, her voice shaky. "Try starting with why," I said, not looking at her. "Why did you do it? Why was that game more important than me?" She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "At the time, I didn't see it that way. I was caught up in the game, and I didn't think I'd lose. I didn't think it would ever come to that. But it did," I said coldly. "And when it did, you still chose the game over me." Sarah took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she rested them on the bar. "Nick, I've been seeing a counselor," she finally said, her voice low. "After you left, I didn't know how to handle it. I had to figure out why I did what I did, why I put that stupid game above everything else, including you." I turned to her, a mixture of disbelief and curiosity flickering in my chest. "A counselor?" I asked. "Yeah," she nodded. "An addiction specialist. It sounds ridiculous, I know. I didn't think I had a problem either. But after you left, I couldn't stop thinking about that night. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how far gone I was. I didn't care about you, our marriage, or anything that mattered in that moment. All I cared about was not losing my seat at the table. I was terrified of losing face in front of our friends." She paused, swallowing hard before continuing. "It wasn't just about the poker game, Nick. I was addicted to the thrill of winning the high of being in control of something. The bet, the gambling, it had become more important to me than you, and I didn't even see it. I didn't realize how deep I was until you walked out." I stared at her, trying to process everything she was saying. "So what now? You're cured?" "No." She shook her head, looking down at her hands. "I'm not cured. Addiction isn't something that just goes away. But I've been in a program. I haven't touched a poker game or even looked at a deck of cards since you left. I've been going to Gamblers Anonymous meetings every week at Trinity Methodist Church on East Avenue. I still see my counselor every other week. I'm trying, Nick. I'm really trying to fix myself." I felt a lump forming in my throat as I listened to her. I hadn't expected this. I hadn't expected her to actually face her demons, to confront what had led her to destroy our marriage. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I wanted to," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "But I wasn't ready. I couldn't face you until I started fixing what was broken in me. I wanted to be able to explain it to you, to make sure you understood that it wasn't about you. It was about me. I needed you to know that you didn't do anything wrong." I let out a slow breath, my mind reeling. "So why now? Why come here tonight?" "Because," she said softly, "I still love you, Nick. And I wanted you to know the truth. I wanted you to know that I'm not the same person I was that night. I'm working on being better. And I needed you to know." I sat there in silence, staring at my drink. The truth was, I still loved her too. But the pain she had caused ran deep, and I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. Could I really forgive her? Could I let go of the betrayal and rebuild what we once had? Rebuild what we once had? Sarah stood up, clearly thinking the conversation was over. "Thank you for listening," she said softly, her voice full of regret. "I'll go now." She turned to leave, but before she reached the door, something inside me shifted. I couldn't let her walk away, not like this. Not when there was still something between us, no matter how broken it might be. "Sarah," I called out, my voice stopping her in her tracks. She turned around, her eyes wide with surprise. "Yeah?" I hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Have you had dinner yet?" She blinked, caught off guard. "No, I haven't." I gave her a small smile. "Care to join me?" A tentative smile spread across her face as she nodded. I'd like that. Within a few months, Sarah and I were living together again. We remarried quietly on what would have been our 4th wedding anniversary. Things weren't perfect, but we were both committed to rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. Sarah continued going to our meetings at Trinity Methodist Church and saw her counselor regularly. She hadn't touched a card game since the night everything fell apart, and she stayed far away from anything related to gambling. The poker group we used to play with disbanded not long after our split, as the other wives, Jessica and Erica, began questioning the morality of what had happened that night. They too wondered what kind of people allowed something like that to happen and why their husbands had held me back. We're still working on our marriage, and I'd be lying if I said everything was perfect. But Sarah's progress and dedication have given me hope.